Hi, folks. It's good to see you. Welcome to you online, and those of you watching this recording after the fact. I'm Nora. I've got a bit of a unique offering here for Adult Ed this morning. I'm here representing the Adult Ed focus group. Actually, our entire focus group is here today. What? Yay! Glad to see you all. The camera tracks to me. So I'm here representing Adult Ed to talk about the future of Adult Ed and what we anticipate and what we're sort of seeing coming down the road. I'd like to start with a look back at what Adult Ed has been in what I've been lovingly referring to as the before times, before the pandemic. And then, maybe a little bit of reflection on what we did in pandemic into where we currently are now in our current state of the Adult Ed programs. And then I want to look at the future. And that's the real meat of things, right? So but it's good to know where we came from. So in the past, now I've been, just cards on the table, I've been sitting on this committee for the 5 years that I've been here. The committee has rotated and I've had all new members come through. And I've seen and heard a lot about what Adult Ed was before my time. So I'm recognizing that I'm speaking a little bit to what Adult Ed was before I was here. And for those of you in the room, if you have other comments, feel free to correct me if I'm misspeaking. But Adult Ed, there were, in the before four times, St. Luke had a lot of focus groups. Amen? Yes, a lot of focus groups here. I will absolutely let you know who's on the focus group. Absolutely, Jilly. So in the before four times, we had a lot of focus groups, and Adult Ed was a prime time spot for the congregation to hear about your focus group. It was a public platform for all these focus groups to speak about their projects and what they had going on and offer a more deeper look at what their little ministry setting was doing. And I don't mean to belittle. I don't mean little as though it's a small ministry. I mean, we are all fish in one big pond here. And then we went from this, we had this model of this breadth of information. You could come to Adult Ed and get an hour's look at a different ministry every week. I heard that people were getting pushed out, like you had to be really vying for those spots. There were so many groups trying to get into those spots that a lot of the work of Adult Ed in that time was coordinating those requests and those asks and those leadership models and trying to navigate and get everybody on the calendar and in a good spot. And then, and then I think the internet really took off. And suddenly there was a time when we could come to Adult Ed and get, some in-person knowledge about a topic, but we could also go online and get a whole lot of information on a whole lot of topics whenever we want. And so we still had this personal model, and it was allowing us to speak about our own personal ministerial identities and our settings. But we started seeing a shift away from Adult Ed as a space where you could come and get a lot of information on a lot of different topics that maybe you weren't already aware of. Well, for a lot of our members who have been here for a lot of years, we've heard a lot about the Division of Indian Work and ICA, Food Shelf, and environmental issues and social justice issues. And we've heard a lot about a lot of these programs that we all still are committed to. One of the joys I love about our community is we have deep relationships that have spanned time, and we have people who have been serving these ministry settings in our wider world for 20, 30 years. And you can only hear about a ministry setting for an hour so many times before it's kind of, well, I kind of know about what I'm going to get in that hour setting. And so we started seeing some more difficulty from Adult Ed leadership to bring in speakers. And so we started doing a lot more outside speakers. We brought in some outside speakers. We do more direct asks to see if we can get those folks doing their ministries to come in and give a presentation and bring something fresh that like maybe as a takeaway, that folks don't just come and sit and have the information wash over them, but then they have something to go and do, an action item, something topical in that moment to make it really meaningful and impactful. And we did that for a while. And then the pandemic hit. That was sort of right around when pandemic hit. And adult ed shifted at that point. And we started doing all virtual. And some of our virtual gatherings had speakers and topics on interesting things going on or helpful health-related things to help us navigate the pandemic. We also had social hours where our community could just gather together and talk about how they were doing and what's going on in their lives. And I've heard from a lot of folks that those have been really impactful, that people really liked those. And some folks even miss those, that we don't do those as much for adult ed. Because then after we got through a year or two, then we started moving into this hybrid model where now all of us know how to use Zoom and we have a camera, so we can record and we can have this thing where folks can be online and come see adult ed or be in person. And now we're doing this hybrid model. In the before 4 times, I call that adult ed 1.0 because I have sort of a software language speak in my mind. And then that hybrid sort of pandemic model was my 2.0, where we reimagined it and we had this whole new thing. And now I kind of feel like we're in like a 2.5, where we're kind of like what we did in pandemic, but we're also kind of doing a little different thing now. And what we're doing now, and that's sort of a look at where we've been. And where we are now is, at least, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Adult Ed Committee, is that we feel as though we're on the precipice of Adult Ed 3.0, where we're getting ready to do something new for adult ed. And I want to recognize here where we're at. So if you're in adult ed, raise your hand. Mike Breckenridge, Evelyn Hayden, Connie Bell, and myself, and Brennan. We are the Adult Ed Committee at this point. It absolutely is always open to new people joining, and I will absolutely make plugs for folks to come on. But thank you for that, Mike. And we gathered in October and had a meeting where we reflected on a specific request from Session. Session has asked all of its, basically all of our ministries, all of our focus groups that are still standing, to reflect on what the next 3 to 5 years might look like for that ministerial context. And they gave us a list of like 4 or 5 questions to reflect on, so that we can move into this new time together with our eyes wide open, recognizing sort of the real life challenges and realities that we are currently facing, which we recognize are radically different from 5 years ago, 10 years ago even. And besides our own sort of cultural shifts and changes, we also have the wider world's cultural shifts and changes where we have a decline in regular attendance with virtual offerings. I'm so grateful that we have our virtual worship offerings, and our stream, when it works well, is great. And we still miss that sense of coming together every week, Sunday morning, as a commitment. Like, this is what we do. We come together on Sunday morning every week. It's hard to make that commitment these days. And we recognized, Adult Ed recognized, that it's even harder to come an hour earlier every week or every other week. And so we went into this session, this review of these questions for Session, with recognizing where we were at, having, most of us have served on the committee at least a year, if not 2 or more in the previous years, thinking, boy, what are we going to do in the future? And so some of the questions were asking us, like, what are our goals for adult ed? What are our opportunities that we have here? And honestly, one of our big goals, recognizing our own limited capacity, was to develop more congregational engagement and more congregational leadership. It is kind of interesting that 2 weeks ago, on a holiday weekend, we had no, it wasn't a holiday weekend, but we had our adult ed forum where we had this lovely topic about the Native ministries at Pine Ridge, and the room was full. And now we come to talk about the future of adult ed, and it's less full. You know, we did change the date, but you heard about it and you came, didn't you, Nancy? So, well, bless you for checking 4 times and that impotence to care about being here. What I mean by that is not that like, oh, we did, but it's the reality that there isn't a commitment to show up regularly to adult ed, no matter what it is. The day is the same, the topic has shifted. And that says to me that we're interested more in a specific topic rather than making a commitment to regularly meet every other week or every week for adult ed. That is the sense that we have seen in adult ed, is that we'll have some topics that just fill the room. And then we'll have other topics, like when we had our youth here at the end of the year last year, filled the room. And then we have other topics and it doesn't fill the room. And it is such a wide swing that it feels less like a simple ebb and flow of a few people deciding that they're not going to go that week, and more that our congregation is interested in topics, specific topics, and getting more in-depth look at the topics they care about, rather than showing up every other week and seeing what we get this week. Yeah.
Every other week is not a good, like, people don't, they don't make their plans based on every other week. It's very confusing. You should have it all the time, or not at all.
Well, Nancy, thank you so much for recognizing that every other week is occasionally confusing, and that it would be ideal to go with either every week or not at all. The reality of trying to produce an hour's content every week with a volunteer board of congregants, I will recognize that we have burned people out in this ministry trying to do something every single week. And I mourn that, because I would hope that we can all agree that adult ed is not about burning out leadership, right? And yet our model was burning out leadership. And so we're trying to adjust with our current model to say, what is our actual capacity? And our actual capacity right now is still kind of stretched at every other week. Honestly, it's still kind of stretched, especially for those of us who have done this before. And we're like, well, should we bring back another one that we did a year ago and had 7 people at? Like, that's a lot of effort and work to do with a little struggle. You know, you put a lot of work into this and folks don't show up. And that's not to guilt or shame. It's just the reality that we live in. And yet we don't want to just say, so we recognize that every week is not within our capacities currently. Now, Nancy, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but since it's your suggestion, if you want to volunteer to lead an every week adult ed forum for a year, like, I will absolutely accept that sort of leadership. Though, barring any sort of general volunteering to lead such a wild endeavor, we're looking at what opportunities we do have here, because we want to engage leadership. We want to engage the congregation in a more regular way, in a deeper way than we currently are. And we wanted to make an impact in people's lives. And so we looked at what opportunities do we have? What opportunities does adult have in front of us for these next 3 to 5 years? Well, we have this well-established time slot of 9:15. We have this opportunity to bring in younger leadership. We don't have anyone in our leadership team. I see you, Connie. I'm going to get to you in 1 second. we have this opportunity to bring in new leadership. We don't have anyone on our leadership team who is really clinging to making this their pet project and wants to do it their way. Everyone on the team currently is ready and open for new leadership and guidance. And we see that as an opportunity. Connie, do you want to say something? Unmute yourself, Connie. We can't hear you, Connie. You're muted.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? No?
Yes, we can.
All right, well, it seems to me the social justice team could, each one in their area, plan 3 or 4 together Sundays, say. That could be their responsibility, or they could suggest and we could follow up and we could do more in depth with an issue. I thought focus groups were positive personally, because I thought they also recruited, they brought in speakers and they also recruited people to be on their team and to do things and work. And I thought that was a really positive thing of the old model. That the meetings, that the Indian focus group would do something and maybe some new people would decide they want to get involved. There were some positives there, I think.
Sure.
But I do think that we could put the social justice team leaders could make suggestions or work out with us on 3 or 4. They could have that assignment of suggesting 3 or 4 speakers. They could work them out or we could work them out. Personally, I do think there is some point to more depth, but I don't think we need to give up every Sunday personally. I think we just need to get more organized. Personally, that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Connie. So to go a little bit into your comment, Connie, and I will get back to where this, what we had talked about in our committee. Social Justice Collaboration Team has provided leadership in adult eds for wider programs for the last couple of years. Our Confronting White Supremacy program is the one that comes right to mind. That was a very rich and well-developed program that took a lot of work and labor. Katie is nodding her head. She was part of that leadership team. And just to recognize that that was all volunteer-led. That was leadership from our congregations who are voluntarily working in social justice leadership, and then also voluntarily creating these programs. And while it was such a gift to have that for a year, for 2 years, because then they brought in another, they had first speaker of a month for another year. That also, if we had forced them and required them to continue that practice, Katie, would you continue serving on that committee? No way. That is burnout city. That is a lovely gift and offering as a thing to develop and then present. And then like get back to the regular work that you're doing as an off saint. Developing those programs on a regular basis is very difficult and will burn out folks. I mean, there are people who do that professionally for a living and make 5-6 figures by doing that. And we cannot offer that to folks. Also, one more comment about the previous model about where adult ed was, and why am I not focused anymore? I don't know why. There we go. You just got to wave at the camera sometimes. Another point about the previous model, there were a lot of focus groups at one point here at St. Luke, and then the general sense from a lot of the focus groups was that it became 1 or 2 people's project. It was their baby. And they spent a lot of time and frustration trying to get other people to join along with them and would have regular meetings to do this and would get 2 people show up, 3 people show up. And that is frustrating and that is disheartening. And that can really make you question, do people care about this? That can breed cynicism. And so the Social Justice Collaboration Team is a team of those leaders who were all still dedicated to whatever social justice ministry they had, saying, there's like 2 or 3 members in each of our groups. What if we all got together and sometimes our pet project wouldn't be the focus of attention, but we recognize that there are more ministries out there than simply our own. And we can do more work together than we can struggling to try to get people to our meetings. And so there was some permission for some groups to just, take some time off. And if you find a new impetus a new energy to rebuild and start afresh, we have this collaboration team that you can bring your ministry to, and we can then work together with a wider group of social justice advocates to advance those projects. This year alone, when you all see the financial reports about where and what groups were given just finances from us and just donated money from us, it's a wide variety of groups. And I'm so proud to see that list. It was very cool. Were you going to say something, Connie?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Would you go ahead and mute yourself again? We're getting a little bit of feedback from you.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. All good, all good, all good. So that's where we've been. Yeah, Mike. We do. It's true. We do have some budgetary concerns. It is hard to justify growing a budget when you don't know if you're going to have 3 people show up on a given week or 30 people show up on a given week. Yeah.
Plus, it's a lot to ask people to come out to speak to us.
It is.
And it's kind of a privileged thing. We're here, you come talk to us.
It is.
You have to come here.
Mhm.
And we're far away from a lot of people in the city.
Yeah.
It's a lot to ask.
Thank you for that, Katie. I just want to repeat it for folks online, that it's a lot to ask folks to come out and come to us from the cities and then speak to a group of 3 people. That's a lot, and it's kind of insulting to that speaker and their time. Is that basically? Yeah. So thank you for that dynamic too. Yeah, Dennis.
So what were the other goals that came out of
Thank you, Dennis. I'd be happy to get into that. So yeah, no, I appreciate that segue, Dennis. So our main goals that we had were we wanted, and this is why we had like generalized goals here. We wanted more engagement, more congregational engagement, and to be impactful in people's lives. Those were literally our goals that we said, if we can do that, we feel like adult ed has been successful. So how do we know if we've met those goals? Then was the next question. What does success look like to us? And we thought, well, it means we're still offering adult ed regularly, whatever that means. And we have a diversity of leadership. So we don't have the same couple people year in, year out, trying to twist people's arms to come speak. That's what success looked like to us, is we have a vibrancy and a shifting leadership because we have new people with new projects that they want to bring in. And we're still offering a regular adult ed time that people come to and feel moved by.
Could you pass the microphone around? I can't hear on Zoom.
So I will pass the microphone around when folks have a question
Okay.
to ask. I'm
Thank
trying to
you.
repeat back their question so that you can hear them. Yeah, and that's fair. And to be fair, I do have a Q&A section at the end, and we'll happily pass out the mic for our Q&A. It's also a lot of work to sort of run back and forth with a microphone. So I'm trying to just repeat back. So I hope that works out for you. So those are our goals and what we look like when we're successful. But what sort of barriers might we encounter was our next topic of reflection. And the first barrier was easy. Hey, Connie, could you go ahead and mute yourself for me?
I thought I did. I am muted. Well,
No, we still hear you. Thanks so much. So then our next barrier, our first barrier was just low involvement, which not low involvement for the sake of, oh, we need more people to be successful, but low involvement in that we have limited ideas. those who are in leadership right now have a sort of our limited ideas. And if we are just there every year, we have the same ideas present, and it's hard to get new, fresh ideas. That's one of the joys of new leadership. Another barrier was that church is not central in people's lives as it once was. And maybe that's not true personally for you, but congregationally and wider societally, the church is not a central point in people's lives that they work their whole schedule around anymore. It is now a point that people work into their schedule when it's meaningful and fits whatever they need. That is the reality we're looking at. And that is a barrier because we can't just say, oh, hey, we're doing adult ed. It's the second Sunday, so come and there'll be an adult thing and people will show. We can't do that anymore, which to your point, Nancy, it doesn't work out. We can't do it, right? We also found that one of the barriers was that these one-shot mods aren't as impactful as we would like them to be. We have speakers come out who are very powerful speakers who have amazing topics on really powerful subjects. And what happens from them? Not a lot. Folks hear them and it washes over them. Are there action items taken? The surveys and the things that we've conducted afterwards, in fact, have shown not a lot of impact. And that to us is a barrier, that this sort of 1 hour chunk of time, the way we've been doing it has not been as impactful as we would like it to be. Another thing that we're looking at right now, we just lost half of our crew because choir goes at the same time. And so we have half of an adult ed, and then the choir gets up and leaves for the second half of adult ed. And when you have a public speaker who you're paying to be there, and half your room gets up and walks out halfway through their speech, that doesn't bode well. It doesn't feel good for a speaker. And it doesn't make them like feel excited about giving that presentation. The final one that we had is handouts. Boy, you know, we love having our virtual people join us. And when we have a handout, it's hard to get it to them. We can send links, we can put it on a website, but it's a lot harder than just, here's a handout, take a paper. And we recognize that that was one of our limitations too. So what sort of resources or tools do we need for the road ahead? That was our next question. Well, if we're going to have special speakers, we still need some financial leverage there to pay people for their time. We need some to publicize. We need to get the word out on what these things are and make it impactful for people and utilize new methods of technology, Zoom, YouTube, the website, other sort of technologically sound practices of our time. And I'm just curious, how do you, those of you left in the room, how did you hear about this? How do you come to understand what adult ed is going to be for a given week? The Thursday email and the website. Okay. Is that fair for those of you online? Is that about the same, or is there anything else? Announcement and you show up at church, right? The Thursday email is where you hear about stuff. That is where we generally get the sense that folks hear about this, is the Thursday email or an announcement that's made at church. So what would we want to share about our program for the congregation? Was our next question that we were asked. Actually, before we get to that, the question I want to move to that sort of feeds that answer is, what is giving you hope and energy for your ministerial context? We asked adult ed, what is giving you hope and energy for adult ed? And we talked about the potential for a fresh start, the potential to shift up the expectation and the model of our current adult ed offerings. Because currently in our adult ed leadership, no one is really wanting to make our current model work. We're all just like, you know, we've been here for a while and it's really not working and it's really hard and we're about to quit too. So why keep doing this? And we saw that there was great hope and energy in being able to make those shifts, because sometimes folks are very passionate about something and they don't want to let go of it. Right now, we are feeling ready to move to a new beginning. We thought up what a new model might look like with opportunities to be impactful and in depth if we change the format around a little bit. And we could be authentic to our current reality, where asking folks to dedicate their volunteer hours to plan a week's hour every single week for the entire year with, you know, a few months in the summer off is not really what church communities look like, at least not what ours looks like anymore. So how can we help live into what our new model of church looks like and be impactful right now, here today in 2022? Are we still in 2022? I think so. Good. Just checking. So what we're thinking, what we came to was shifting away from every other week and recognizing we don't have the capacity to shift into every week. And so the question was asked to me, well, Nora, you're dealing with a lot of this stuff. How do you deal with that in youth ministry? And what I offered was that I'm trying out a 6 to 8 week model where I offer in-depth programs for 6 weeks in a row, maybe 8 weeks. And folks can commit to about a 6 to 8 week model. I've found that our youth and our teens and our families can commit to about a 6 to 8 week chunk. They can commit to that. They can't commit to every week all year. They just can't. They want to, they like it here, they like what we do, but their lives are pulled in other directions. I think all of our lives are pulled in other directions, and it's hard to try to make every single week work. And if we as a church can offer grace to folks and recognize that that's where folks are at, and we can offer programming that serves where our current community is at, that would be faithful living, that we could live into our call to support people and not force them into our models. So what we're looking at, and we're looking to start this in 2023, in the new year, is shifting away from every other week and moving towards a 6 to 8 week chunk of time where the Adult Ed Committee is committed to figuring out an in-depth program for that chunk of time, where we get one topic and we look at it and we really have impactful, meaningful educational opportunities on that topic over several weeks in a row. And then we take some time off until the next major opportunity. And here's where the best part comes in. We're not saying, and so you can't get your pet project in here. We want to open the door. If someone wants to bring in a guest speaker, cool. You have a lot more opportunities to do so because we have a lot more Sundays that are going to be open, and it's a special one-off offering that we can announce and put through all of our publicity settings that folks can come to if they so choose, because we can still do those special offerings. But as an Adult Ed Committee, if we want to be impactful and responsible for our leadership to not burn them out, we recognize that we could plan and organize 6 weeks in a row around a given topic in the spring and 6 weeks in the fall and make some really impactful ministries that are really present and really things that are really timely, and go deeper than we could in a single hour. Whereas in a single hour, you know, someone might say, hey, and I have this book, it's really cool, you should read it, go do it. And then everyone leaves and maybe someone picks it up. But if we have this longer setting, we imagined that we could have we could come up and talk about a topic and say, hey, here's this book. And we have several copies available in our library and you can borrow one. And in 3 weeks, we're going to have the author here to talk about it. Those are the kind of things that we can do with a focused, in-depth model that still allows for a very special guest speaker to come in on a one shot. So that's what we're thinking for Adult Ed 3.0. So we're looking at the spring to roll this out, and we imagined the first program that we'd look at is in the spring, and we want to offer something over Lent. So we're looking to do, so I am going to be creating and leading a focused Bible study around gratitude and grace, a Lenten journey of compassion. That is my theme for gratitude and grace. And we will have an 8-week course where we will have some scriptural reflection, but then also personal reflection, chances for our community to gather in community with the intent to go deeper in what we know and what we believe, and maybe hear from our other colleagues and our other congregants and our friends and leadership to potentially develop and learn and grow as adults. We recognize that there is a wide breadth of experience and expertise in our community, and many of us have mourned and missed the general sense of communication and community that we fostered during pandemic, where we gathered online and just chatted with each other about what was going on. So we're going to see, and we're going to do a little blending of that. I'm going to be grounding us in some scriptural passages that are jumping off points for our own personal reflection. And we'll go into this new form together. And we are also open. Like I said, this community is open. The leadership is open right now. If you don't like what I'm saying, if you hear this video and you don't like it and you just really want some other model, come on, talk to me. I've got an adult ed committee that would love some leadership. If you're, a little nervous about this, but we could probably do it, give us a chance. Come check out the adult ed for Lent when we do a deeper program. So we're going to take January and the first part of February and not have any adult eds. And then we're going to have a 6-week course or an 8-week course, 8-week course, where we go deeper and we build ties within our community and reflect and try to grow in our own spiritual sense. And then we're going to take a few more weeks off. And I haven't secured everything about it, but we're then planning to have a one-shot guest speaker in the spring that we think that we're pretty excited about. I don't want to name any names yet because it hasn't been solidified, but I'm pretty excited about it if we get them. And so then the spring offerings for adult ed are this opportunity to go deeper and grow in our own spirituality and our own base of knowledge in community, and have an opportunity to hear a really captivating speaker. So that's where we're at for adult ed. That is our plan for adult ed 3.0 and what the next year will bring for adult ed. I am happy to open up any questions or comments or thoughts, anything that is on your hearts. We got 2 coming up. I'm going to bring you the microphone.
Thanks, Nora. I don't want to assume, but Adult Ed 3.0, will that be during this time frame on a Sunday morning?
Great question. Yeah, at this point, we've recognized that folks know that adult ed is at 9:15. Whether or not they come to it, they know that that's when adult ed is. And in a time of transition and shifting, we want to try at least keeping it at that same time. Now, we recognize that means that for that longer program, we're still going to have choir members who leave halfway through. And that is the reality. And we're going to try it. And if that first program suffers from it, and maybe we think, maybe an after worship adult ed mod would be easier for folks and attract more people, then maybe we'll shift and we'll try that. We're absolutely looking at trying something new, and then recognizing and reflecting on the strength and the successes, as well as the challenges that were brought, if we need to shift again for the fall.
Could even consider starting at 9 o'clock.
We could. Yeah.
have a larger chunk of the choir individuals a part of things
Yeah,
for a longer
and
time.
do like a
frame.
solid 45 minutes before they have to leave. Absolutely, we could.
This is Dennis. Having been involved in adult education for 40-something years,
Yeah.
the key is education,
Mhm.
the word. A lot of times what we're getting is information, and as you stated this morning several times, education has to lead into action and a change behavior. But you also mentioned some other things, the way things, what was covered in the past. We continue to need to provide the members of our church information and opportunity to interact with those social groups that have brought forth their information
Mhm,
every year.
mhm.
And it isn't just via the website or an email, it has to be an engagement. So we have to make sure we continue to do that. We need to make sure we continue to need to allow the groups to socialize, like you said, on a couple of the weeks. I don't think that's just gathering after church. It's a time where our members can come together and talk about maybe issues that are concerning them and talk about them. So again, it may not fit into this time, but we need to do that. Another thing too is that I've been involved with other churches where they've had small group adult education, not large group adult educations, but small group around various topics. We all assume that, Sunday's a good time, but I've been to adult ed programs that have occurred during the week
Mhm.
on a Wednesday evening
Sure.
when the church is involved with other type of activities. So if you have a youth group or things on Wednesday nights, I'm not sure how this one works.
Me
Yours
neither.
has mostly been on Sunday. What can we do to engage our members maybe at another time on a topic that might take 3 or 4 weeks? It may not be a Sunday, but it might be a
Mhm.
Wednesday. But
Yeah.
again, just some other ways. I like
Absolutely.
the idea of doing things in depth, but I think we have to have flexibility that if an important issue does come up,
Yep.
that we might do something that particular day or time. And I'm biased in what I'm interested in, but I always think that there should be an adult Sunday program focused around an earth service during April. Now, maybe it's not done at this time, but it's done at another time because that's traditional too. So
Mhm.
there are other models to think about, but I
Absolutely.
think the important point that you're making is that it needs to be a more in-depth approach, which will actually lead to probably behavioral change than will a one-shot informational slot.
Thank you, Dennis. A lot to unpack there. You can hang on to it or give it over to Nancy here. A lot to unpack there. I really appreciate those comments. I do want to note that we have talked about a survey of the Congregation for Adult Ed. Those things we've talked about, the scheduling of it, potentially doing it at another date. We've considered those things, and one of the suggestions that we're leaning into this coming spring is based on a story that I heard about Sunday school. And I want to share this real quick because that's one of my favorite stories. And then we'll get to you, Nancy, real quick. Before I was called here, there was a time when Sunday school leadership was faltering, and it was hard to find Sunday school leadership. And the decision was made that we were not going to offer Sunday school anymore. And an announcement was made at church that we are not going to be offering because we don't have the leadership for it. And Gail Hall heard that and said, well, I don't like that. I'm going to get my friend Chris and we're going to go volunteer to do Sunday school. And now Chris Van Leerup and Gail Hall are two of our superstar Sunday school coordinators that I could not do Sunday school without. And they've made such an impact in these children's lives. And Gail, like Chris is an educator. Awesome. Gail is not. She doesn't have formal education. Like that's not, but she has found personal meaning out of doing that work based on the reality that she saw, which was, oh, like she wouldn't have thought to volunteer for it just generally because that's not her skill set. But when she heard it was going away, she thought, I am passionate about that. I feel called to support that. I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. And now it has been such a lovely gem in her life, and she just will talk up how impactful it's been for her as well. That dynamic sits with me as I wrestle with how do we engage people for adult ed. And that dynamic of, you know, this is where leadership is at right now. The folks who have been serving on this committee for a couple of years, this is where we're at. This is where we're feeling. And so we're going to shift and we're going to change gears. And if folks feel passionately about having something come on, awesome. Let's make room for them to come on and provide some leadership. So hear me when I say that things like an adult ed based on an Earth Sunday that's uplifting eco-justice in April for eco-justice during spring, absolutely. That can totally still happen. Because people in the congregation feel passionately about it, and we're going to make it happen. But adult ed committee is not going to try to twist someone's arm to give a presentation about eco-justice on that Sunday. We're going to say, this is our calendar. We've got a lot of openings. We're almost, this 3.0 is almost kind of going back to 1.0, where we're saying, bring your pet projects. We have a big calendar. We can fill them up with your one-shots. But as a committee, we want to provide the foundational depth of knowledge at a deeper level that makes more of an impact. And then we add that spice and flavor of the one-shots to sort of build up the calendar based on whatever is impactful and is timely for our congregation. This new model I'm seeing as a yes and, or a yes both. That we as a committee are pledging to go deeper and opening up space for folks to bring their projects in ways that maybe our congregation is less used to. We have this, for years now, we have an adult ed committee that plans and organizes adult ed. And so I don't need to worry about adult ed, the committee will do it. Well, the committee is working on these impactful programs and welcomes, and this is going to be part of our publicity in the new year. We are welcoming any sort of one-shot or limited ministerial uplift that you want to have for any pet project you have, anything impactful. You hear about something, oh my gosh, I would love to bring that speaker in. Come talk to us. We have a calendar that's pretty wide open. Let's see where we can slot them in. That allows the schedule to be more organic and allows the committee to do more impactful work instead of just trying to fill a bunch of one slots. So thank you for those comments. Nancy, I'm done rambling on. What were you going to say?
Several things. One thing is, you know, I'm always open for change, so this will be interesting. Two things that need to happen. We need to have a couple different paid people to take care of children so that we can get some of the younger members of our church to come who have children. So there should be a group for kids that are maybe up to 5, and then another paid person to do activities for kids who are older than that.
Sure.
And that needs to be advertised well so that people can start coming on those 6 weeks.
Sure.
The other thing is there really needs to be much more communication about this, because it hasn't been that long that we used to have, and I'm going to be griping now. I'm going to be going
Gripe
back to
away.
the past. But we used to have people that were turned away from giving, from having their ideas. And we
That's
had,
right.
for a while, we had 2 morning offerings every Sunday. So I think it's not just that people aren't interested, that we've come to not having stuff. Part of it is the dismantling of the focus groups, and that whole change that has affected this dramatically, because the focus groups used to bring projects. So I think there really needs to be a lot of communication to not only the current social justice groups, but the ones that used to exist that were kind of pushed out of the way, so that there can be more people coming. And Dennis, I
Sure.
really like your idea about the social groups too. I think that if we had some groups that could meet and, you know, we could have topics, they could be just even getting to know people better. Because, you know, I don't know a lot of things. I know more about Marcia than I do about you, and it would be fun to get to know people better. And the new people must feel that they don't know people very well because there aren't enough opportunities to
Mhm.
get to know people.
Thank you for those comments, Nancy. I do want to push back gently on your language of the dismantling of focus groups, as the leadership teams of all of those focus groups were offered the chance to join a larger group or continue in their own, much like Adult Ed has. And many of those groups thought, you know, I'm tired of no one showing up to my thing. I'm going to take a break.
There was a group that had lots of people showing up, and that group was not encouraged to stay.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm really sorry to hear that. I'd love to hear more about that, because I am unaware of that. So I would love to hear more about that, because the idea of turning people away from Adult Ed or turning people away from a focus group is so antithetical to what we want to offer in our new program. If there is just an abundance of people coming at us with things that they want to offer up, we'll get you on the schedule and we'll figure out ways to make it in. And maybe we offer a thing after, like we're not going to turn people away. We are making more room and inviting more people in.
I understand that, but I'm talking about if some of the events in the past have caused what's happened.
Yep.
to get us to the place that we're at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if I had a magic wand to erase the past, I would probably start with much of my own past and my own traumas. But unfortunately, I recognize, and one of the reasons I'm starting, and we wanted to start with this Lenten journey of gratitude and grace, is recognizing that there has been a lot of trauma and a lot of conflict in the past that has brought us to where we are today in many of our systems. And I don't know a lot of that history because I wasn't participating, and I maybe wasn't here for it. But I do want to welcome a space where we can try to do better and try to come together as a community to grow and develop as people, welcoming in, growing our circle as much as we can. So while I would, and I appreciate, and I am sorry for the events of past, this is where our committee sees a chance to move forward and potentially try to rebuild by offering folks a chance to go a little bit deeper in their own self and connect a little bit more with community. Because something happens when you come together with the same people or roughly the same people for 6 to 8 weeks every single week. We've seen it in OWL. We've seen it in OWL a lot, is that folks build this sense of community and you get to know people better and you get people deeper. And that alone is the education of our own community that I think will be most impactful, despite what we put on as for our topic. So this sense of like smaller groups working together and having a given topic, I'm anticipating this first group is going to be small, honestly. We'll see how it is. It might be large. And if it's large and we need to grow and have new groups, cool, we'll do that. We are looking to respond to our current setting, recognizing where we've been, recognizing the traumas of the last couple of years, and recognizing the chance to begin anew in a new time, in a new age. Recognizing we're all still those same people with that same memories and the same institutional history behind us, but trying to breathe together, recognizing through gratitude that we have the chance to be together, through grace, recognizing none of us are perfect, that we can move forward and get and educate ourselves and grow deeper as individuals and a community. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if it's great. It is what our adult ed committee has reflected and discerned is the way forward for the next 3 to 5 years. And we'll probably shift again based on the needs. But so what I will say to close here is that whatever happens, whatever comes, adult ed is looking to respond to the needs of the community and in a faithful way. And do that in a way that is open and welcoming and inviting to grow our community, to grow our circles wider. That's what we're looking to do for the future of adult ed. Any other questions, comments? Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for your comments. Really appreciate you. Thanks for being online, taking the time. Take care.